Hello, and welcome to the Shankly Gates Podcast, where today we'll be talking about the Burnley game yesterday and also covering all other news that's come out of Liverpool in the past few hours and also plenty of other things to talk about. Today, I'm joined by Kieran, David, and Dan. How are we all doing this evening, fellas?
All good.
Yeah, good, mate.
Yeah.
Good. Glad to hear it. So, before we came on, very interesting news to start the evening. Xherdan Shaqiri, for the past few weeks, has been on the radar of a few clubs, but officially, Fabrizio Romano, here we go, confirmed. He'll be moving to Olympique Marseille. Was it Lyon? Olympique Lyon? There we go. Correct. Olympique Lyon for the fee of £9.5 million. So I think we've known that funds-wise, Liverpool have been struggling this year. So, Kieran, I'll start with you. How much of an impact do you think this transfer will have?
Well, I'd like, it could go some way. I mean, $9.5 million. It's not, we sort of talk about figures these days. Might, depending on what type of player we want, might not make. It doesn't sound massive, but I think, the type of player that we go for, we don't go for these massive spends. So I think it could make a real difference. I mean, I just want to, speak about Shaqiri as well. He's been, I think, a fantastic servant while he's been here. I mean, for me, my memory of him being there when he scored twice against United at the top end, for me, special day, getting one over on them was fantastic. But yeah, hopefully $9.5 million. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. He had a decent Euros as well. So yeah, for me, I'm happy with the fee.
Well, like Kieran said there, Shaqiri's done quite a bit for this club, David. Do you think it was the right time to move him on, or do you think that he had a bit left in the tank at Liverpool?
I mean, it's probably the right time to move him on. You look at Harvey Elliott yesterday, particularly, who's coming through. Is Shaqiri going to be in his way type of thing, or the other way around? Is Shaqiri going to get any game time with Elliott playing? So it's probably the right time to move him on. 10 million isn't a lot of money, or just under 10 million isn't a lot of money. But at the same time, if you keep him till the end of the season, you probably won't get that. So, I mean, for me, yeah, probably the right time to move him on. His game time's going to be limited. His value's okay at this point. And it just opens up a bit more space maybe for Harvey Elliott. And who knows, maybe someone else to come into the squad.
Agreed. Do you think with that 9.5 million, Dan, do you think it signals a new signing, or do you think it's just going to be banked and saved for later on in the season, or maybe next transfer window?
I think it gets banked and added to wherever we get for Origi. That's what I hope, anyway, if I'm going to be honest. Origi, Nat Phillips and Shaqiri were out of the squad yesterday, and there was two goalkeepers on the bench. Now, if that doesn't suggest that something might be happening with all three of them, I don't know what is. There was no word of an injury with Origi, nothing. So that would be my suggestion. I don't think we need to directly replace Shaqiri. I think the lads have mentioned Elliott, and I think Cade Gordon has been mentioned in passing, maybe in the cups, domestic cups. So I'm quite happy with that. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But yeah, I think that 9.5 million could go towards someone, but not until the likes of Origi and Phillips leave. And I just want to say as well, Leon only wanted to give us 4 million 2 weeks ago. So Michael Edwards, it might not be massive, but he's also managed to get an extra 5, nearly 6 million out of them. So fair play again.
Well, Michael Edwards' masterclass it is again. See it every transfer window. You talked about players being left out of the squad yesterday, but we didn't need them in the end. I know we talked about last week, Burnley's sort of our bogey team, but 2-0 win in the end. Kieran, first of all, happy?
Yeah, very happy, mate. I think if you win any Premier League game, I'm more than made up, and especially to do it with a clean sheet as well. I can't fault any of them. I thought we could control the majority of the game. Let Burnley have a couple of chances here and there, but I thought on the whole, very solid. Like two clean sheets with Matip and Van Dijk back. I think that we'll speak about it later, but I think that's been a good couple of games for them, especially with Chelsea in mind next week. But yeah, happy days, 3 points back to winning at Anfield with a full crowd. I mean, what more could you want?
Definitely. I think that's what we're all looking forward to. David, two positions that I think we were unexpected in what was going to be in that department. we didn't know if Milner would play left back, but I think it was sort of decided that Costas, after his first game performance, could be there. And he proved it with his assist to Jota for the first goal. What did you make of it all?
Do you know what? He's another Klopp signing who's took ages to get an opportunity in the team. And obviously, Andy Robertson's fantastic, isn't he? So it's been tough for him. But then he comes in and he plays really well. Played well against Norwich last week. Had a couple of little moments where you thought it's a bit iffy. Against Burnley, he was just excellent. I didn't see anything wrong with his game, to be honest. He was getting forward. Obviously, Burnley try and get at you very direct and don't really go down the wings too much. And when he did, it was through Dwight McNeil on the left. So arguably a bit quieter for him. But I mean, I still don't think he keeps his place in the team. But what a backup we've got there for Andy Robertson. I thought he was excellent. I think that the club gave him man of the match as well. And I had him in my fantasy team. So, I mean, all round, he's ticked all boxes there.
He has indeed. It was a very good performance from the lad.
Yeah.
Dan, I think Burnley were on the ascension a bit. They caused us a few problems. I think they had one goal disallowed, but which was clearly offside. Do you think that the second goal, which I think it summed up Liverpool last season, and it summed up what we've been missing in terms of Virgil van Dijk, did you think that sort of made it comfortable for us and sort of sealed the game?
Yeah, I did. It was never comfortable at 1-0. I don't think games against Burnley are ever comfortable full stop. It's something we alluded to last week. They make life difficult, don't they? It was a bit, I think Klopp referred to it as somewhat of a wrestling match, and it was at times. I think it was Jota got thrown to the floor at one point, quite literally, didn't he? So, yeah, they're tough, aren't they? And that's the way they play. And credit to them, they're organised and they made life difficult, but always needed that second goal. Thought we had it with Salah a little bit earlier on. But yeah, you're right. The second goal was, to coin a well-used phrase around Liverpool, poetry, emotion on it. It was first class. Like Trent's little round the corner pass is out of this world. And I was made up for Mane as well. I think obviously he didn't score last week. Had his problems last year. So to get an early goal is probably the best thing for him. And that's all four forwards now scoring in the first 2 weeks, which is pretty good news, really.
Poetry in motion indeed. Kieran, can I just ask, how beautiful was it to see Matip and Virgil van Dijk at the back together after the last season and the troubles that we had?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at them and you just feel safer. You do. I mean, no disrespect to, the lads that, Reece Williams, Nat Phillips, who did fantastically to get us into the Champions League last season. They did fantastic. But, you look there and you see, two experienced world-class centre-halves. Not just us, Burnley, if it had been Phillips, and Williams and, Chris would have been looking at that, he might have been licking his lips a bit. But I think, just looking at them as an opposition striker, you think, going to be a much tougher game here. So, yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic to see them back, isn't it? You just hope, touch wood, they stay fit all season. Well, Joel Matip, you never know how many games he's got left in the current run. So you just hope that it doesn't pick up any knocks because, with them two at the back, I think we're gonna be, I think, very solid. So. Hopefully they stay fit and they can continue a wonderful partnership.
Hopefully. Touch wood indeed. David, I think it was quite sad to see Fabinho obviously missing out with the sad passing of his father in the week. Obviously, I think the midfield has always been a bit of an area of contention. I think after the first game, the balance wasn't quite there, and I think we were sort of desperate to see different personnel in the midfield. So what did you make of the midfield trio of Henderson, Keita and Harvey Elliott?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I wouldn't say shocked, but excited to see Harvey Elliott start. He's just fantastic. He's just got so much talent. I do eventually think he'll move into the front three, but he's going to get plenty of opportunities in central midfield. Henderson in defensive midfield does for me, and then I know Fabinho's fantastic at what he does, and I do prefer Henderson a little bit more forward. But he does that job there perfect for us. And Naby Keita, he's had a good start to the season. I don't know how long it's going to last because it's Keita, but he's had two fantastic games. We can't argue with what we've seen. As you say, I think the balance was quite good. I mean, you'd think it was a bit more offensive, if you like, with Elliott being in there getting forward, but Harvey seems to be really, really picking up that centre midfield role quite quick. It's frightening. So yeah, I mean, I was happy with it. I think I didn't have any concerns as such from the midfield he picked. But obviously, we're a lot stronger when probably Fabinho's in there with Henderson and maybe Thiago. That's probably our best midfield three, which is frightening, really. That there's a better midfield three and we can switch it up and we can have different players coming in there. It's just great to have a bit of depth.
Definitely. Dan, I know how much of a fan you are of Harvey Elliott. Very outspoken in your admiration of him. But do you think that in terms of his positioning, is he better in the front three? I know we saw quite an active front three yesterday, performing quite well. Or do you think he'll get more chances in the midfield?
Before yesterday, I would have said front three. But having watched him yesterday, and Dave touched upon his all-round game improving, and his work rate and his pressing and all the off-the-ball stuff. Because to me, previously, the little glimpses we've seen, we think, talented kid, spots a pass, little turn, beats a man, all that sort of stuff. But having watched him yesterday, I'm not sure. I think he could be the attacker out of that midfield trio. And I have my reservations about him moving on to the right wing long term, because obviously at the minute our game is based on the pace of Mane and Salah in behind essentially, and I'm not sure he's got anywhere near the pace of Salah, so I don't know if that'll work long term. In terms of quality, I think he's got quality to play pretty much wherever he wants. His pace might hold him back on the wing, but so that might mean he might be a number 10 or that advanced midfielder from the three. We'll see. But listen, I thought he was outstanding, whichever way you want to dress it up. Like, I thought he was unbelievable. And to show the confidence, and he kind of got knocked about a bit in the first 5-10 minutes. I think Burnley thought, right, we'll get stuck into this kid and see if we can put him off the game. And it didn't happen. He just went, okay then, sound. And he got on with for 80 minutes. And I thought that showed more than anything else he could have done. And I think in a similar way to Curtis Jones, like his game last season improved a lot in terms of his defensive contributions, having been a bit of a flair player. So if Elliott can kind of go on that path, and I actually think he might be better, then I think we're in for a hell of a player.
Well, you mentioned there about the Royal Rumble that we watched yesterday. I think we'll touch upon that a bit later on. But Kieran, I just want to talk to you about the atmosphere yesterday. First home game with fans back. We obviously saw before the game a lovely tribute to Adam Devine. How special was it to be back at Anfield yesterday?
100%, mate. It was, it was wonderful. I mean, going to, just walking up to the ground. I mean, there were long queues. I was a little bit worried, because again, I didn't go to the friendly, so the queues were as big, bigger than I'd seen in previous games. So, but as soon as I got in the queue, they went, you got into the ground very quickly. So, I know that was good. But yeah, that atmosphere is just, sensational. Just walking up to those steps, feeling like a kid again, seeing that pitch was magnificent. And yeah, I mean that the tribute before the game where we were obviously reading out the names of former players as well who would pass during the pandemic. It made you feel quite emotional, especially obviously with You'll Never Walk Alone, coming along, in the background. So yeah, I was pretty emotional during that, and it was fantastic. And when the game got underway, just to hear that, just to hear the cough, come to life, and the chants, of Liverpool, and everything's just fantastic. And it's just what the players have missed. Really, we've seen it last season with the consecutive defeats. I think when you've got that crowd, it's like even for a 12:30 game, at times it felt like that was a Champions League knockout round night, and you sat there and realised it's Burnley at 12:30 on a Saturday. So for me, it was first class, and it was long overdue, but so worth the wait.
It was definitely a special game. But I just want to stay with you as well, Kieran. Was there any special players that you thought yesterday stood out and proved that they are really going to show us what they're made of this season?
Well, I mean, you lose them there. I was made up with Harvey Elliott. I thought, as everyone you've said, there on and off the ball is fantastic. That ball into Salah for the goal that was disallowed, I thought was absolutely first class. I mean, I didn't know it was offside at the time. I assumed it was on, and was just laud and praise it. It was fantastic. If for me, everyone had solid games, no worse than 7, 8 out of 10. But Tsimikas and Trent were fantastic down the wings. In terms of man of the match, notable candidates. I thought Jota took his goal very well. What a wonderful header across the front post. But I probably would agree with the with who Liverpool gave the match man of the match to Tsimikas. A lad who's coming in, there's obviously going to be a lot of pressure on him. He knows, Robertson's, coming back. Can he match up to the standard of him? He certainly can. I mean, if you didn't know who Robertson was, you would think that was him yesterday. I couldn't, see too much of a difference. And I think it was all summed up by there was a moment towards the end of the game where he's surrounded by 3 or 4 Burnley lads. It was to be fair, it was right in front of me, so it was obvious for me to spot. And he just twists and turns and gets out of the spot, ends up on the floor. Ref doesn't give a foul, so he just carries on, gets out of it, and lays it off. And he got an absolutely standing ovation from the crowd. So yeah, for me, I thought Tsimikas was my man of the match there.
Well, speaking of Robbo and Costas, I think that moment sort of gave me flashbacks to Robbo against City, gaining all the admiration of the crowd. Just a question as well, Kieran. Do you think that is probably Costas's last game for a while now, as we saw, Robertson on the bench? Or do you think with the performances he's had, Klopp will say, you know what, Robertson isn't, maybe not match fit. He will give him the game against Chelsea to Costas instead?
I mean, it's going to be a big week in trading, isn't it? It is. You might not think it is a difficult call to make. I think. I mean, you can't fault Tsimikas' performances in the 2 games, but I think obviously Robertson was fit enough for the bench. I don't think Klopp had any intention of bringing him on, so we don't know how fit he is. I think personally, obviously, if he's fit, Robertson plays. I think he's got to play. You've got a massive game at the weekend against Chelsea, who've started very well this season. So it's really unfortunate on the lad. He's, like I say, he's been absolutely superb. I just think the big game experience and playing Burnley at home is a lot different to playing Chelsea at home. So providing he's fit and Klopp's happy, I think he's going to go Robertson. I think you look at Tsimikas. It certainly won't be his last game. There will be League Cup, FA Cup ties, possibly Champions League game as well. I see no reason why you wouldn't play him in that. But I think, providing he's fit, I think Robertson will come back into the team at the weekend.
David, how about you? Who stood out for you, and do you think it will be Costas or Robbo for the Chelsea game?
Well, in terms of the left backs, we've got to be careful with Robertson because we've kind of got a little bit lucky on him getting back so quickly, and I think it could be quite dangerous if you rush him back, especially when you've got Tsimikas in such good form. I wouldn't rush him back. I also wonder that, Robertson's played as well as he has for the last however long, and his only real competition has been in the early days Moreno, bit of James Milner. Now he's got someone up behind him trying to get his place in the team. How far can he push himself? That's frightening. In terms of people that stood out for me though in the game, I think I've got to give Trent a mention. Obviously, Harvey Elliott was brilliant, and we've all mentioned Jota, but Trent, to me, I'm not having this narrative. He's got something to prove because he didn't make it in the England squad. I'm not having it, but he just looks like he's had a bit of a break. We forget he's a young lad who's been in the team since he was in his teens, and he's had a little bit of time out, and he looks refreshed. He looks brilliant defensively as well, I've got to say. I know we've only played Burnley and Norwich, but he was up against Dwight McNeil yesterday, who Burnley like to sort of make a little bit of a focal point, and he handled them very well. I thought he was excellent. Dan's mentioned his excellent assist for Mane. He's still got that in his locker. I just think there was a lot of good performances, but for me, Trent really stood out just in terms of how he played, and hopefully there's nothing that's too wrong with him. I know he was hobbling at the end and he didn't look too good, but fingers crossed that's not going to be a big issue.
Dan, I know we've talked a lot about the defence. How about the midfield? We saw Henderson come back in, playing in the 6 with obviously Fabinho absent, and Thiago coming on late on. Do you think both of them showed enough to say that they'll start against Chelsea, or do you think that it'll be a different midfield combination?
I think Henderson certainly showed enough to start the game. But I also would start Thiago. I think for the same reasons Kieran mentioned, starting Robertson at left back, and I get Dave's points entirely, and I think he's entirely right, if I'm honest. But if Robertson's fit and if Thiago's fit enough for 90 minutes, and of course the big caveat is Fabinho's situation, we have no idea right now. We might have a better idea tomorrow if he's training and what have you. But for me, I would go with what Klopp perceives as his strongest 11. This is Chelsea at home. Third game of the season or not, they are going to be a title protagonist alongside us and probably City, in my opinion. So whatever he thinks his strongest 11 is, regardless of season and where we are, this is it. He's got to play it. And like I say, Thiago wasn't outstanding when he came on. He had glimpses, he had moments. But for me, he's part of the best midfield three we have. So he starts in it. I do want to say I thought Keita was exceptional yesterday. I think he's had a little bit of stick, but I think he was really good. I just think we need to be clever with how we use him. And that probably isn't starting in 3 games on the run. So if you can drag him out of that game, even better.
I agree. We don't want to get rid of Keita too soon. We want to keep him for as long as possible, I'm sure. Well, I think we've covered the win yesterday, but I'm quite interested to see what, Kieran, you think, first of all, about Oxlade-Chamberlain obviously leaving the squad yesterday. I was quite concerned. I thought, great, injury, 2 games in. But we obviously found out that he'd obviously went and had his newborn child. Do you think, though, with him being out and be able to see the likes of Harvey Elliott and Keita in the team, do you think that shows that we've got better squad depth this season that, obviously we saw last season, we particularly don't?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, thankfully it wasn't, an injury as such, and congratulations to, Alex and Perry on the new child. Fantastic news. But obviously we look at, I think, we do have good midfield options. We just raved about Harvey Elliott there. I mean, we've lost Gini Wijnaldum this summer, and then we do talk about, are we going to replace him or not? But then you look at like a performance of a Harvey Elliott yesterday. We mentioned him obviously before as well, Curtis Jones. Do we actually need that, replacement? I think we do personally, but are the club going to see it like that? I'm not too sure. They'll probably look at it and go, maybe at the minute we've got enough cover. Obviously we look at last season, how many injuries we had in a certain position. We get 2-3 injuries in the midfield, and all of a sudden we're going to sit here on a podcast and go, why didn't we buy? Why didn't we add? So I think that has to be brought into mind. I do think we do have options there. We've certainly got a decent depth of central midfielders there to cover all competitions really. So so many names. For me, I do think that the depth is there. It's just injuries. It's the injuries is the big one. If we have 2, 3, 4 injuries in that position, it does maybe start to look very very bare in there. But I think for now, I think you could treat Harvey Elliott as like a sort of new signing. Really, we've not paid any money for him, but coming back off on loan and starting there is just maybe what we need. But we'll see. I do think we do need to add in this window. I would like to see a replacement for Wijnaldum. Whether we get someone or not, we'll wait and see.
Well, Kieran's touched on injuries there, David. We know that Klopp said after the game that the match was more physical than I think he probably liked, and that he likened it to wrestling almost. Do you think that Burnley were intentionally too physical, or do you think that that's just how Burnley play and there wasn't really much issue with it? I
mean, that is how Burnley play. I half think Klopp's got one eye on next week when he's coming out with these comments, because you're going to have Lukaku up front against potentially Van Dijk and Matip, whoever starts, I don't know. So I think he's just trying to, slightly influence opinion maybe. It's Burnley, you know exactly what you're going to get out of Burnley. It's no surprise. I thought it was quite nice when Tsimikas just give a little shoulder barge into it. Was a Goodmanson and he was down, and I was thinking that's exactly what you do to us. So is right, Costas. No, I didn't see. There was moments where I think, is it Ashley Barnes wrestles Matip down to the floor? I think that was kind of what Klopp was alluding to. But no, I do think he's got an eye on next week, and he's trying to make a point of, he knows there's a tough challenge coming next week when we take on Chelsea and Lukaku. So I do think he's trying to just stir it up a little bit, if I'm honest.
Dan, how about you? Do you think the same as David, or do you think a bit different?
No, I agree. And I think, like David said at the start, I think Burnley, that's the way they play. That's what we all expected. We pretty much sat in, had the same conversation last week. They're going to be tough. They're going to be physical, etc., etc. And Klopp's not stupid. He'd have been fully aware of that. I think Klopp's main point was referring to the referees' handling of the game, because a lot of the time they've been told, haven't they, to kind of let the game flow a lot more. And they are doing that in the main. I think that's brilliant, by the way. But then, are they overlooking things that probably are free kicks? I think that's what Klopp was kind of getting at. Like the couple of instances whereby people were literally thrown to the floor, and you think, I get you wanted to flow, but that's a free kick. You know what I mean? I think that's what he was kind of edging at. And I've watched a lot of Premier League footy, obviously, since it's been back, and a couple of referees are letting it flow really well, but a couple are still pulling it up for these niggly little free kicks. And I know this is early days, we've probably still got teething problems, and some of them are still refereeing it like it was last season, if that makes sense, and they haven't quite come up to speed with how the game's going to look. So listen, hopefully it all irons out. But in terms of Burnley's approach yesterday, I didn't have too much of a problem with it, if I'm honest. We don't see it often in the modern game. I think the fact they were numbered 1 to 11 told exactly what we're going to get from Burnley. They're pretty old school, aren't they? So, it is what it is.
Definitely. It's been a good start to the season, Kieran. I think we expected probably a bit more activity in the transfer market, but we've seen as well this week talks about Hendo and Salah, and obviously a few other players already have extended their contracts. Would you say if we extend these big players' contracts, it's a good transfer window overall, or would you say that we definitely need to bring in a few more players?
For me, I would like to see us bring in 1 or 2 more, certainly. I mean, we speak about the funds and all that. Got to remember, probably most of these funds are going on these contract extensions. These contracts will have been, added to for the first time since, winning the Champions League, winning the Premier League, and all the bonuses and the wage increases and whatnot that's going to come with that. So I think that does have to bear into consideration. It's obviously fantastic news when you see the likes of 2 of your main players, Henderson and Salah, committing the future to the club. I had no doubts they would, but it's there in black and white when they do it. So it's got to be done. But I just think, looking at last season, I just think it would be remiss of us not to have the depth there for it, because you don't know what's going to happen during it's a long old season, be it domestically in Europe as well. So I don't think we don't go out and we don't spend like City and all that. I think there will be a plan there, of course there will. I just think 1 or 2 cute little signings here or there, like Jota was just out from the blue there. That was a fantastic signing for us. So something like that, would be fantastic. I like I say, I just hope 1 or 2 more would. I'd be a lot more comfortable.
David, do you think that transfers are the main objective, or do you think that these contract renewals are probably the way to go? I think the question that I want to ask you really is how big. We talked about Henderson possibly leaving the club. We saw the insanity in the sense that they weren't going to renew his contract. So in that sense, how big is Hendo to the club? And if that's the case, isn't it more important to tie down these big players as opposed to signing new ones?
Yeah, I don't think Jordan Henderson was ever in threat of leaving the club, if I'm honest. I think it was much ado about nothing. Jordan Henderson's unbelievably important to this football club and will rightly go down as one of the greatest ever players. What people don't realise, I think, is, I always say this, so I apologise for people who think I'm being boring, but people say we've signed Canate for 40 million when in effect we've probably spent about 70 if you account for his wages over the contract, the bonus that we pay, the agent fees, the signing on fees to him, and Liverpool will include that all in one go. So even though we might say Liverpool have only spent 40 million, realistically, when you add up all of the player contracts that we've done, we've probably spent closer to maybe 200, 250 because Liverpool will put that money aside for the next 4 or 5 years of the contract. They won't sort of go, yeah, we'll give Van Dijk, whatever he's on, 200 grand a week, but we'll just play it by ear and see in 4 years if we've got that money. Like, that money's aside, it's tucked away, it's spent. So I don't get this whole thing of we've only spent 40 million. In terms of additions, obviously it's massively important to keep this squad together, but you've also got to have one eye on the fact that a lot of them are approaching 30. Certainly all of the front three, Van Dijk, Henderson's over 30, James Milner's 34, who's one of your main people in the dressing room, if you like. So it's important we get people in to take us on to the next level, like your Jotas. Harvey Elliott will play a big part in that. In terms of the squad right now, I think we only really need to bring one more in, if I'm honest. I'm quite happy with midfield being relatively covered with the likes of Elliott and of course Curtis Jones coming in. You've got Chamberlain to play in there and Keita. And obviously Fabinho, Henderson, Thiago, as we've all said, is probably our best midfield three. I'd like to see us bring somebody in across that front three. Because obviously if you're getting rid of Origi, you've got rid of Shaqiri. Minamino's all right, but he's not... if someone gets injured in the front three and then you're relying on him to come on and change a game for you, I just think we need someone, A, to obviously be there in case somebody gets injured, but B, I think we just need someone there just to shake things up a little bit. If we need someone to come on and change it up, I'd be happy if we just got one more person in and around that front three area just to cover us up there.
Dan, how about you? Contracts or signings? Which one takes priority for you?
Oh, I think they're doing things the right way, if I'm honest. I think getting Konate in dead early was... It kind of settled. If we were at this point now, we hadn't signed a centre-back after what happened last year, there'd have been uproar, wouldn't there? Amongst Liverpool fans on podcasts and Twitter, it'd have been chaos. So signing Konate, early doors, done. Brilliant news. Then I think getting the contract renewal sorted is probably next most important, and that's fine. But I do still foresee a busy little last couple of weeks in terms of players going out. I mentioned Phillips and Origi. Obviously, Shaqiri looks like he's gone already. And then hopefully a couple in, because I agree with Dave in terms of getting a man across the front three. I think that's essential, especially with the African Cup of Nations in January. I think losing Salah and Mane for however long it's going to be, I don't trust Minamino and the likes of even Jota. I wouldn't want to see him as the main man alongside Minamino and Firmino. That's a lot weaker, in my opinion. And if you look at the likes of, we've still got Karius on the books. We've still got Shea Ojo on the books. And Dave's dead right to talk about the contracts they factor in, but we should factor that into our sales as well. So getting rid of Shaqiri not only gives us 9.5 million, it also frees up a wage, and it also frees up a squad space. So hopefully the same can happen with Origi and Phillips. And then, listen, we might sell 10, 12 players, but if we can bring 3 cute signings in with that money, I think that's a perfect transfer window, especially if we can tie down Salah and Henderson in the final couple of weeks. I think that would be ideal. So, yeah, all as important as each other, I'd say. But I have reservations about our midfield depth that we spoke about, because that midfield depth suddenly goes from, yeah, it's brilliant, to, Oxlade, Chamberlain and Keita are out for 4 weeks, and Milner's picked up a little knock. And it sounds harsh, and I really hate saying it, but that's the reality of what we've lived for the past 3 seasons.
Well, Dan's predicting a busy few weeks, but we'll look ahead first to next week. Kieran, how do you feel about going against Chelsea? We've seen today that they beat Arsenal 2-0 quite comfortably, I'd say. Confident, or do you think that it's going to be a mountain to climb?
No, I think I'm confident at this stage. I'm very excited. It's we're only 3 weeks in, but it feels like a massive football match. I mean, we've seen probably our 2 closest rivals, both from Manchester, have already dropped points this season. So I think, going into it, I do think it's a huge game. It's definitely a chance, to put a marker down here. We can turn Chelsea over next week. 3 wins from 3. And then you've got your 3 main rivals already dropping points. I think it's definitely a good start to the season. I mean, we've had a good start, but it is only Norwich and Burnley. This is going to be the real test. I mean, obviously, Lukaku scored today. I think he's going to be, their main threat. I think we got a good taste at the weekend with Chris Wood throwing himself about. So I think that it was good for Matip and Van Dijk to experience that type of forward, because that's, I think, exactly what we're going to get next week. Obviously, just at a higher quality. So they've got that in the bank. I just think, I'm made up at Anfield, full crowd. I think absolutely we'll use that to our advantage. Hopefully, Chelsea are up for it. For me, I am very interested to see how Thomas Tuchel's going to play next week. Does he come and try and play football, or is he going to try and sit? I do think he'll probably come here and try and sit, because I think for them that they'll be made up with a point. I think they'll see this as very tough place to go, one of the title rivals. So I don't see them playing too expansively at all. I see them sitting in. You've got Lukaku to a long ball too. Timo Werner, if they decide to play him, obviously you've got to pace him behind for the counter attack. So, I am, like I say, I am confident. 2 wins and 2 clean sheets, and a home game at Anfield. I just, we can only hope really that I do think it's a massive game. So hopefully we can get the job done, because if we start the season 3 wins out of 3, I think the rest of the league already this early is going to look at us and go, is this the Liverpool of a couple of seasons ago?
Well, Kieran's mentioned there about close rivals in the Manchester clubs. David, do you think with the personnel that Chelsea have added this season that they could be possibly contending for the title? And do you think, if so, we have the capability to match them?
They'll absolutely be contending for the title. Even towards the back end of last season, you're seeing them really get into a nice rhythm, and then they won the Champions League, and that's massive. Like the momentum they've carried from that. They've signed Lukaku. What I've liked about Chelsea is that obviously when the whole transfer ban ended, they just went crazy and signed everyone. And this year they've kind of gone, right, we don't really need that much. We've kept the squad together, and they've just added nice bits to it like Lukaku. So they're going to be right up there. It's going to be a real tough challenge to beat them to the title. We've definitely got it in us to beat them, though, absolutely. And especially, as Kieran says, being at Anfield, if we can get the crowd behind us, that's massive for us as well. The big battle is going to be certainly Lukaku and whoever plays, whether it's Van Dijk, whether it's Matip, Canate, Gomez. Klopp's alluded to a bit of rotation coming at centre-half. I don't know whether this would be the right game to start changing things up. But obviously as well in midfield, where if Chelsea can start dominating and Jorginho starts making them tick, can we stop them from doing that? We can't, but can we do it on the day? It's massive in terms of the title race. I know it's 3 games in. It's probably the first massive game of the season, certainly for us and them. They played Arsenal, and Arsenal are just not a very good football team, are they? Let's face it. Whether you think that or not, you've got to agree they're just a bit bad. So that's not a massive game anymore. This is a big test because we've played 2 of the probably relegation threatened sides in the league, and we've come through perfectly. Really, haven't conceded a goal, have scored 5 in 2 games. This is the big test now to see just how far this team. Nobody's backed us to win the league. You've got idiots like Gabby Agbonlahor saying we're not even going to get in the top 4. I mean, that man's getting paid to give that opinion. That's just pathetic. So this is our chance to really set ourselves, make them look a bit stupid and say, do you know what, actually, yeah, if we beat Chelsea, we're right in the frame for the title, 100%.
Dan, do you agree? Do you agree that this is a big game? And how big of a game do you think this is?
I agree on the Gabby Agbonlahor point. No, genuinely. Dave's dead right with the final sort of surmising of that then. Everyone's kind of not even talking about Liverpool in terms of title chances, but bigging up Chelsea's. So if we can put a serious statement together next weekend and beat them, all of a sudden, not that it matters, but everyone will go, hang on a minute, they're still decent. You know what I mean? What I will say about Chelsea is even watching that Arsenal game before, obviously they had a brilliant run under Tuchel last year and he's got them organised and they won the Champions League, so on and so on. If you look at this Liverpool side at its best, which is, 1 to 11, probably what it has been or close to recently, there's not many areas of weakness there with Van Dijk back at centre-half. I'm not sure about their defence one bit. If you name Rudiger, Christensen, and possibly Thiago Silva, who might be a year too far gone now, I mean, I'm not convinced by that personally. And if you put Kurt Zuma in there, if you like, but he's on his way out by the looks of it. So I think they're trying to sign one. I think they've had to Jules Koundé from Sevilla. And it's probably a good reason they're trying to sign one, if I'm honest. So I'm not sure that defence is all we've cracked it up to be in terms of them being favourites for the title. I still put ours over theirs comfortably. So yeah, I think we can beat them. I think it's a difficult game. I think if we stop Lukaku and even stop the feed into him, because that's what Arsenal couldn't do today. They got the ball into Lukaku's feet so easy time and time again. But if we have Fabinho or Henderson stopping that happening, I think that'll kill a hell of a lot of their game. So, massive game, good side. But do I think we're better than them? Yeah, I probably do, yeah.
Well, Dave and Dan have mentioned it there, Kieran. Big changes, maybe. Where would you say that the changes are going to be in the team? And what does a lineup look like for you if we're going to beat Chelsea next weekend?
Yeah, well, obviously for me, we alluded to, I think Robertson again, question mark if he's fit. If he is, he comes in for me. Obviously midfield, Henderson keeps his place. I'm looking at a big game. I think I'd agree with Dan before. I think for me, Thiago starts. If God looked a little bit sloppy at times, but I think big games like this, you want your big game players. We also got that midfield three. I mean, could look at if you're going to do the lad who does the runner, I'd maybe go for James Milner as the other one of the midfield three. Just big game player. He's you know what you're going to get with him basically. Whether that works as a midfield three, we talked about Casey. He's had a fantastic start. Do we have him? Not, I'm not too sure. I think obviously Man for me, the front three at the minute picks itself. Mane, Jota, and Salah. I know, obviously Bobby came on. I think he's the one that's missing out at the minute. I think rightly so. I think that is the front three we have to go with. It's looked good so far. I see no reason to change it. So I have the two key areas will be the position of left back and the midfield three.
David, how about you? Agree with Kieran?
I actually think Firmino might come back for this game. And I think, unfortunately, Jota might miss out. I just feel like Klopp might want Firmino in for his defensive work, maybe. I think he'll want to disturb Jorginho particularly. And as much as Jota loves running, just absolutely lives for sprinting, I think Firmino's a little bit more clued on tactically and can drop in on Jorginho and prevent him getting a real grip in the game. I'm tempted to say bring Milner in, but I think if there's an injury to Trent, I'd say put Milner right back. I don't want to see Nico Williams playing in this game as much as I think he's all right and he's a kid and he makes mistakes. That's why I don't want to see him. This is not the game for development. Do you know what I mean? This is a big game. So potentially there with Milner. Thiago, I'm a bit up in the air about whether bringing him into this game is the right idea. I don't know whether, as you say, maybe you put Milner in there. Do you put your faith in Keita and keep him in there? I think obviously Fabinho is fit is defensive mid and Henderson. Either or is playing as well. We've mentioned Robertson. I just hope the Klopp doesn't mess about with the centre halves. I really don't, because he can't, as I say, he mentioned swapping them, and I don't think it's the right game to do it. Although Konate can probably, certainly by looking at him, can probably deal with Lukaku because he's a monster, isn't he? Again, I don't know whether it's the right game to throw him in and hope for the best, because Lukaku he's always been a bit like, he looks that he's got everything and then he'll just lose the ball, but he looks a bit different. He looks like he's ready for this and he looks top draw. So, yeah, you might be throwing Konate to the Wolves if that's the case. But yeah, as I say, I do think it'll be Firmino coming in for Jota. That's the main one. Just to try and disturb the midfield a little bit.
Well, Dan's got the Klopp beard. So what's the lineup then, Gaffer?
Well, I've got the glasses somewhere, but he doesn't wear them anymore.
I know,
yeah, for me, Dave, dead right. I'd stick with Matip and Van Dijk. I think centre-back rotation's coming, not this game. Obviously, Trent, if he's all right, is an absolute no-brainer. Robertson, for the reasons we mentioned before. I would go with Thiago. Big game player, for one. I don't really trust Keita enough, and that might be a little bit harsh. Fabinho and Henderson. I just think it's time, cut a long story short, I think it's time to see what I perceive and what a lot of us perceive as the best 11. And I think this is the week to do it. Chelsea at home, put a statement down. And for me, that is the back five I've mentioned. Henderson, Thiago, Fabinho. And then I think Firmino's still part of our best 11. And I hate myself for saying it because I was lauding Jota earlier on Twitter, and I think the kid's unbelievable. And I think he's got such a big part to play. But I just think when the big games come around, Klopp and me think Firmino, because he's got that big game now. And how many times has he come up with the goods in these sort of games? And he's got that, like they mentioned, the cleverness to drop in and do the hard work that needs doing in these sort of games. And also, not only that, going forwards, I still think Mane and Salah are better with him in the middle of them. I think Jota, for all his qualities, he's a much better finisher than Firmino is. Let's have it right. But he brings so much more to Mane and Salah than Jota does still. And Jota will get there. I've got no doubt about it. And I only think we're probably one season away from Firmino really being faded out. But he looks fresher and he looks hungry. So for me, I'd get him back in there.
With that in mind then, Kieran, score predictions, what we're saying?
For me, I see a cagey game. I'm going to go just with 1-0 Liverpool.
David?
Head says 1-1. Heart says 2-1 Liverpool. I just think, as Kieran says, it's going to be cagey. The opening sort of probably 20 minutes or so is going to be very tense. Either side probably aren't going to want to give up too much. But then you look at the two managers who are going at each other and they just want to play football and attack. Certainly Klopp, he won't be sitting in and hope for the best. And Liverpool will be at it from the off. So I just hope that fans behind us, these Chelsea players might not be used to a full crowd yet. It might be the first time they've experienced a proper atmosphere. I just hope we can get through 2-1. I'll stick with 2-1.
Dan?
Slightly more comfortable, just because I agree with the fact it's going to be cagey and probably not a lot will happen for 15, 20 minutes. But I think if we can get on top and can nick the early goal, Chelsea then have to come and play. And I think that plays into our hands entirely. And I think we get a second one and kill the game from there.
Well, I'll go with a 2-1 away from the 1-1. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for this evening. Very lovely to talk to you all. Very lovely to see that Liverpool are winning still. Hope you all join us next week when hopefully we're reviewing another Liverpool win. But for now, thank you very much and good night.